Good afternoon. Welcome everyone to the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services for the 82nd legislative session. We have a few folks coming in. We do have a few seats on the left-hand side of this room. So just as folks can keep coming in, we also have overflow rooms available. So Madam Secretary, please proceed to call the roll.
Senator Lang. Senator Wynn. Here. Senator Titus. Here. Senator Stone. Chair Doniate.
And I am here. Thank you so much. Please mark Senator Stone present when he walks in. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's committee meeting on Senate Health and Human Services. I'm going to give just a quick roundup of how I have the agenda planned out. So right now, so today we have a work session and we have bill hearings on Senate Bill 191, 192, 385, 397, 439, and 441. The order that I have right now is we're going to start with Senate Bill 441. Followed by that, we will break for a recess. We're going to see how far we can get with this bill presentation, and we will have to break for recess for the presentation by Senator Cortez Masto. At that point in time, depending on how far we are with the hearing, we will come back. If we adjourn before, if we finish the bill hearing before, that'd be great. If not, we will continue the bill hearing once the session with Cortez Masto ends. We will then come back and finish the Senate Bill 441. We will then proceed to do the work session once Senator Stone joins us. At that point in time, we will do the bill order as following. We will do Senate Bill 397, 191, 385, 439, and 192. Again, that is, we're starting with 441, then the work session, 397, 191, 385, 439, 192. Depending on how long we go, we do have the opportunity, we might break around 6:30 p.m. So that legislators and staff have the ability to feed themselves, and that is also when we would ask the members of the audience to do the same. But that is the order that we have, and so I just wanted to give the housekeeping items for you all so that everyone is made aware, and just know that I may be, depending on how today goes, I might take things in different orders. We ask that for those of you that are here today to please, if you have public comment, to please keep them to 2 minutes so that everyone interested in speaking can be accommodated. And for the sake of time, if you are cut off from your 2-minute time limit for your public testimony, we ask that you please give your additional testimony to the staff members. If you do not wish to testify, you can also sign in at the front desk. That way we can go ahead and understand who is here in case we need to contact you later. And as I mentioned, I may request at an additional time for you to provide additional documentation. Anyone who wishes to receive copies of the committee's exhibits should go to the Nevada Legislative website, and you may also request copies from our committee manager. And lastly, we ask everyone to please turn off their electronic devices, especially cell phones and laptops, and put them on silent mode throughout the meeting. All right. So as I mentioned, we're going to start off with Senate Bill 441. That is the first bill that we're going to look at. This bill revises provisions relating to public health. So here's how I envision this presentation to go. We have with us Senator Dondero Loop to present this bill. Once she presents the bill, and we go through the additional remarks, we will open it up to questions from committee members. At that time, we will go ahead and open it up for testimony and support. Once we do testimony and support, we will now then move on to opposition. We are going to allow the opposition folks to present their portion of the bill, and then we will move on to opposition testimony, and then we'll go to neutral. After opposition testimony and after the presenters will be the two instances that folks on this committee can ask questions. So we will have two different times to ask questions, both to the opposition and to the bill presenters. And then we will finish off with neutral testimony. That is the plan for this bill. So I just want to make sure everyone was on the same page. Senator Dondero Loop, welcome back to Senate HHS. Please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I am Senator Marilyn Dondero Loop. I represent Senate District 8 in Clark County, and I'm here to present to you Senate Bill 441. Some of you may know this and some of you may not, but this bill has actually made me think back to my mom. My mother, Thalia Dondero, was the first woman to be elected to the Clark County Commission almost 50 years ago. Imagine how much courage it took for her to break that barrier in those days. Her sheer determination inspires me and countless others today. She had the courage to stand up, be heard, and be counted. Throughout her career, she was never afraid of political reprisal or paybacks. If she believed in something enough, she would simply soldier on. She would often remind me that to be effective in public office, you have to trust your gut and you have to call them the way you see them. Today, when I'm deciding on bills, I hearken back and I ask myself, what would Thalia do? The reason I bring this up is because as a senator, I draw on my mom's legacy every day, and it's her good judgment that led me to introduce this legislation. Senate Bill 441 is a declaration that the last remaining law of the emergency COVID era is proposed to end. 2 Nevada governors have already declared COVID over, and President Biden brought COVID-19 to a close yesterday. Looking back to the beginning of COVID, we did everything we could to protect ourselves and our visitors while knowing little about the virus and its transmission, how long it would last, or how dire the consequences would be. All we knew is that it was deadly, and so we acted. Remember when some of us thought it would only last 6 weeks, or that it could be transmitted on hard surfaces? And who can ever forget the toilet paper crisis? Writing COVID laws was indeed a remarkable accomplishment born out of the fullness of our uncertainty. I'm not aware of any legislator who was here that regrets voting yes on SB 4. I know I didn't. At the same time, we also approved SB 386. Those 2 emergency bills were essential to ensuring the health and safety of Nevadans and tourists, and they worked effectively in tandem to protect us from a ravaging worldwide pandemic. In the meantime, we sheltered in place, social distanced, we vaccinated, boosted, we wore masks, and we fought hard against the coronavirus. And in part because of the laws we enacted, we protected ourselves, we saved lives, and we prevailed. But we missed something. In the rush to craft SB 4, we forgot to do one thing. As you know, SB 386 sunsetted last year. SB 4 didn't. It was an oversight. Since we meet only every other year, we had to wait until now to act. It's clear as day that we should have phased out Senate Bill 386, and that's why I brought this bill. To be clear, this isn't a repeal of something we got wrong. Quite the opposite. This is a sunset of something we got right. It worked then, but it doesn't work now. Basically, the metrics we relied on are either no longer in effect or out of existence, yet today the statute remains locked in place. Given now that what we know, we should unburden our hotel operators of the COVID area restriction and allow them to return to the high standards of cleaning they have used to meet and exceed expectations related to their customers' safekeeping. That's it in a nutshell. It's the simple sunset bill that ushers out COVID-era room cleaning requirements and ushers in post-pandemic health and safety standards. I have watched this industry for as long as I have been alive because I was born and raised in Las Vegas. I believe that our hotel operators know their customers best, and for 70 years they have always made their customers' safety a top priority. In closing, I'm proud of the work we did on SB 4, and I'm proud to appear before you 3 years later to present Senate Bill 441. Like Senate Bill 386, it's time to sunset a COVID house cleaning policy that served its purpose but outlived its necessity. It's just a house cleaning policy that served its purpose but outlived its necessity. While thinking about this bill, I ask myself 2 questions. Why would I keep a law in the book that has no objective justification for it? And of course, what would Thalia do? I would like now to introduce Senator Rochelle Wynn for some additional information, and Billy Vasiliadis with the Nevada Resort Association, who has been intimately involved with the state COVID response and is here to provide additional information and answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, heading into evening. Chair Doniate and members of the Health and Human Services Committee. For the record, I am Rochelle Wynn, and I represent Senate District 3 in Clark County. I am grateful to Senator Don Darrell Loop for allowing me to help present Senate Bill 441. As you know, there's probably 3 of us in this room, and two of us that serve on this committee that were actually a part of the special session that led to Senate Bill 4 during the 32nd special session in 2020. Not to get all sentimental, but when I think back to the summer of 2020, I'm reminded of that uncertainty. I remember the fear. I remember what many of us thought would be a 2-week sacrifice in our lives back in March of 2020 turned into its 4th month of uncertainty and fear. In my household, we were glued to the television, we were glued to our phones, we were glued to the internet, watching health officials, watching President Trump, watching our governor, watching Dr. Fauci, and also seeing the ever-changing recommendations. I remember a time where we were trying to protect, I know in my family, we were trying to protect my father. He had survived 10 years in a war to come to this country and work as an immigrant, and he has diabetes, and so at one point I knew he had potential risk for COVID. I also lived with my 83-year-old father-in-law at the time, and we were concerned about his health. I also had my 2 kids that we were trying to school and do distance learning and make things as normal for them as possible. And I was scared for myself and my husband as we had to continue to go into the court system as things were not stopping in that area. I remember hearing briefings from public officials to the legislature, and we would have meetings about the ever-changing nature. We would have meetings and call meetings with doctors and hospitals and nurses and other people that worked within the health industry to figure out what to do and how to react and what we could do to keep ourselves safe. I even think back to, she mentioned the toilet paper situation, and with 6 adults that needed toilet paper, this was a very real situation in my household. And so I think about that. Even in 2020, when we met for this special session in the summer of 2020, their masks were still not available. We did not have, people were still washing their groceries before bringing them into their house. So that's where we were at that time. I remember having those same thoughts as I entered into that 32nd special session. I remember when the discussion of Senate Bill 4 was discussed. And unlike many of the committee members that are here today serving, I was able to vet. We were able to ask questions. We were able to talk to our leaders and talk to our health officials to figure out what we could do to best protect Nevadans. A piece of legislation that was established during that time was health laws to prevent the transmission of COVID-19. Senate Bill 4 provided certain entities with immunity from civil liability for personal injury, and we came up with health and science-based evidence to make everyone safe. And that's what we knew in July of 2020. I remember speaking with our public health officials and briefings with other legislators about this ever-changing information. And a lot of these things, like home testing things, vaccinations, therapeutic treatments for COVID, didn't even emerge onto the scene until January of 2021 and even later. This COVID protection bill was based on what we knew in 2020. I believe in science, and I know many of the people that are in this room also believe in science. I also believe in the legislative process. I believe we vet bills based on the information that is before us, the science that is before us, the evidence that is before us. And I also know that we have a duty to follow that science and amend our bills when they no longer follow that same evidence-based system of science that guides public health. This COVID protection bill was based on the information, again, that we knew in 2020. And it was our legislative intent, even at the time of the drafting of this bill during the special session, to protect people, our workers, our businesses, our tourists, our economy from COVID. In fact, we intended these COVID protections and we intended them to sunset. We have provisions in that bill that are intended to sunset. So everyone that was at that table discussing that information, whether it is those representing our workers, those representing like liability interests, those representing the resort association, and us as legislators and the executive branch, all were a part of that and intended that this would sunset. We turned to our public officials and medical professionals. We listened. We encouraged people to do the same. And we tied these provisions to one of three provisions that were relevant in the summer of 2020. We intended the provisions to sunset with the science and reporting of 2020. So I'll, guide you to that legislation. And again, this sunset is tied to only one of these three provisions. So I'm going to go through these three provisions just so you know what we're talking about and what we tied the science to at the time of 2020 and what we're talking about undoing here today. One is the governor's emergency declaration. This has already happened. We have already ended this by our previous governor, our current governor, and just yesterday, our President of the United States, President Biden, also ended this emergency declaration. So that is that. The second and third are the most problematic because they're based on what we knew in 2020. The first one is positivity rates over 5% in any 14-day period in a 90-day period. This is data that the state doesn't even post. It doesn't even publish this information. So the State Division of Behavioral Health and Public Health no longer publishes this information because it is not an accurate reflection of our testing numbers. At the time, if you'll recall, you had difficulty even getting a COVID test in a hospital. We hadn't even set up these drive-through locations to have COVID testing in the summer of 2020. So now, the reason this information is not ever tested and the reason this bill will never sunset, because it is based on the science and collectability of data in 2020. This doesn't reflect it only, the testing positivity rates only counts those people that are typically hospitalized. So those numbers are always going to be high because we are not collecting the data of all people tested. We now have home testing kits, and so people are not reporting those home testing kits. And so that is not included in the data that is being assessed and evaluated that was intended in this bill to keep people safe. The third one is the new case rate above 100 per 100,000 in any 14-day period in a 90-day period. Again, this data isn't reported on a regular basis because it's not collected in this manner. We have, we have various strains. At this time, I think there was only one strain of COVID that was impacting us in 2020. And 3 years later, I think we are at the point where we need to follow the science, we need to follow the evidence-based training, and we need to repeal this last COVID protocol that, I will agree, we got this right. We got this right in 2020, and this saved lives. However, we need to stay consistent intellectually, morally, and responsibly and legislatively to the bills that we vet in this building, what our intent was in 2020 when we passed this legislation, and we should follow that science and we should follow that data. We should listen to our public health officials when they say, we don't collect this data anymore because this is not accurate. This is inconsistent. This is not a reflection of safety. And so with that, I would turn it back over to Senator Dondero Loop.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to introduce Mr. Vasiliadis, and he has a statement to make.
Chair Doniate, thank you very much for allowing me to speak today. Members of the committee, thank you for your attention. And to Maryland Senator Loop and Senator Wynn, thank you for both your sponsorship, your support, and your thoughts. Chairman, I will try not to be too repetitive, but I think many of the points are the same and need to be repeated. First of all, the context of SB4. As Senator Loop said, Chairman Loop, Senator Loop, I was just not here on behalf of the resort industry. I also had worked with the governor's COVID task force and the governor's medical team as a lot of these protocols were being prepared. And I could tell you, for a guy who's not particularly bright like me, it was as confusing as hell. The terminology that was being used, contradictory reports to the WHO, our own health districts really couldn't agree. Reporting, as Senator Wynn said, testing was a nightmare in and of itself. Masks don't mask, wipe surfaces don't wipe surfaces, airborne or by contact. All those issues were debated literally every day. We came to this session, and the Governor Sisolak called the specialists specifically to deal with the COVID-era issues, with that time period's COVID. And we did. We had good faith negotiations and discussions. The bill originally was going to be a liability protection bill because it was hard to figure out how to sue somebody when we didn't even know how COVID yet was being contracted and transmitted. And so we sat down and in good faith passed this bill. Then you passed this bill. We negotiated this bill. 386. Again, in 386, we did and negotiated with my good friend detailer, and that's not a sort of a thing we say for nice protocol. Detailer is my good friend for a long time. And we sat down and discussed moving those sunsets in the right place, and we did, and it sunsetted, and it worked. We assumed, we took it on faith, that when the emergency orders were declared over, as they have been by Governor Sisolak, Lombardo, and now President Bush, that this would end. But yet, here we still are today. What we're asking for as an industry primarily is customer choice, which, by the way, we had before COVID. That would be informed choice. You're going to hear what customers can choose not to now. We need to inform them that they have that option. Prior to COVID, the customer satisfaction surveys for Las Vegas resorts, for Southern Nevada resorts, was 90%. 90. And with that, we informed them that they could choose to not have their room cleaned every day, and somewhere between 40% to 50% chose not to. Why? It's Vegas. I'm out at night. I'm sleeping during the day. As much as I adore my housekeeper, I don't want housekeeping when I just went to bed. And it becomes a question of customer choice and informed choice. Operationally, staffing's tough. It has been tough, and not just for Las Vegas, not just for Nevada, not just for this industry, tourism industry wide, with the options of hybrid work, working from home, et cetera, many folks have opted not to go back to a customer-facing, public-facing position. If you look at two major airports in Europe, Heathrow and Schiphol, Amsterdam and London, are capping the amount of trips they're allowing into those airports because they can't staff up. If you look at what's happening with airlines, you look at what happened in December with Southwest, it wasn't just a data issue, it was also major staffing issues. We're seeing all the incentives today to get pilots back. So across this industry, staffing is a challenge. Now, I think we're beginning to stabilize here, but the idea that we could just pay $25 an hour, $30 or $20, whatever it is a little bit hopeful. In that you look at all the national surveys of people entering the workforce, the number one thing they're looking for is flexibility. Flexibility defined as I can create my own schedule, number one. So getting folks to come back is not that easy. We have had entire wings down, rooms down, et cetera, for days at a time, a week at a time, in order to be able to get everything clean. Again, we're not talking about not cleaning rooms. There's laws in place now that we have to clean, change sheets, et cetera, when the room changes hands. Our customers can want their rooms cleaned every night, and we will. It's an option not to. I don't know about you, but a lot of times when we go on vacation, we just want fresh towels. I'm sure a lot of you do too. So the operational issues are tough. But let me say this. This industry, our industry specifically, North and South, has had a commitment to excellence. That's how we survive. That's how we continue to grow. That's how we continue to employ the wonderful employees that we have. And the fact that we would not clean our rooms because it's a financial burden, We need those customers back again and again and again. Las Vegas, for example, counts on a return about 2-point-something trips a year per customer. They wouldn't come back if we didn't keep our properties clean and we didn't service them well. So, and I guess finally, I don't understand why this has become such a contentious issue, such a political issue. This seems to be a purely policy issue, an issue of we had COVID protocols because it was COVID. We put terminology in there for what we knew then that we know is not that relevant today. During the last year or so, we talked to many of you, many legislators, we talked to many folks running for office and asked about this bill, about SB4, about, you know, isn't it time then? And most said, yeah. In fact, quite a few didn't know it was still the law. There was still a little bit of wonderment that it still was in effect because it doesn't make sense. This is one of the last COVID-era protocols in the country that is burdening this industry. So ask for your support. We ask you for support of this bill. We ask you to allow us to get back to doing what we do best, servicing our customers, working with our employees to present a great product in this state. Chair Donate, with your permission, I'd like to also introduce President Virginia Valentine of the Nevada Resort Association. We have Aisha Molino, who is the Vice Chair of the Resort Association from the MGM. And we also have, sorry, Carlos, from Caesars here, who will also be addressing you, among others, but would like to introduce those three as officers of our company. If there's any questions that you would like me to answer, I'll do the best I can.
Thank you, sir. Senator John Loop, does that conclude your presentation?
That concludes our presentation here, so we will stand ready for questions.
Thank you so much. Committee members.
And we do, I'm sorry, we do have Ms. Molino on the Zoom so that she can also make a statement and answer questions. So I don't know if you would like her to go now because she's on the Zoom.
Yes, please. And I know that there's a time difference sometimes, so please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to Senator Dondero Loop and Senator Nguyen for your comments in support of this incredibly important bill. My name is Aisha Molino. I'm the Senior Vice President of Public Affairs for MGM Resorts and also the Vice Chair of the Nevada Resort Association. And thank you also for allowing me to present my testimony on Zoom. You know, the folks that have come before me have so aptly talked about what the environment was like in the summer of 2020 when we began negotiations on SB4. And from the operator point of view, I just want to give a few comments because I also was part of those negotiations. And it was a time of incredible uncertainty. And we came together, many of the operators came together with a number of other stakeholders to work with the legislature and work with then Governor Sisolak to introduce a set of policies that were really focused on two things. It was focused on creating a set of standards that would give certainty to our employees and certainty to our guests that we were taking the pandemic incredibly seriously. And this was a time when the entire Nevada resort corridor for the first time, every gaming facility in the state for the first time had been closed for 77 days. We had just reopened, international borders were closed. People were terrified of getting on planes. The time we were negotiating this, COVID tests were in short supply. When we could get tests, we weren't sure how long it would take to get test results. And what we knew more than anything else is as people started to very gingerly travel again, that it wasn't just a particular moment in time when we were going to have to demonstrate to our guests that we were taking this pandemic seriously, that their health and safety, that the health and safety of our employees was at the forefront. But if we didn't get this right, then the implications were going to stay with us for years to come. And the reputation that we all had worked so hard to build for the last decades could be ruined just that amount of time. At the same time, we were also seeking liability protection because, again, we were in this moment of unbelievable global uncertainty where there was just information coming out about how the virus was transmitted. But if you recall, people still weren't certain at that time about how virulent it was, indoors versus outdoors. These were issues that were still being navigated. We were navigating in real time. And so we thank the legislature. We thank those of you who were part of the negotiations at those times for your support getting this across the finish line. And this applied. We are now in a very different moment in time. And the health and safety requirements that were contained in SB4 in the present day operating environment, they just aren't necessary anymore. They've created adverse impacts to the resort hotel industry. And in the case of daily housekeeping, what we have found is, from the operator perspective, is that our guests and the demands that they have, especially in terms of housekeeping, have really changed over the course of the last 3 years in ways that we couldn't have predicted at the time. We are constantly monitoring data trends relative to our customer preferences, and we're in a highly competitive industry where we know that customers have a lot of choices about where and how they spend their travel dollars. Las Vegas has been very fortunate in that we have seen a significant amount of demand from our customers in the wake of the pandemic, but we also know that as the world continues to reopen, that competition is only going to heighten, and that if there's one thing that we have to do, it's be very responsive to customer demands. And it is a very hard thing for us as operators to be in a situation where what we are doing is telling our customers that we can or cannot offer them something because we are still under COVID-related mandates, when from the rest of the world's perspective, COVID is, in terms of at least the mandates, effectively over. For the last 12 months on average, more than 40% of our guests in our stable rooms have placed do not disturb signs or otherwise declined daily housekeeping service. This figure is consistent across all of our Las Vegas resort properties. So that's regardless of whether you're staying at the Excalibur or you're staying at the Bellagio. What we have found is that customer preference really holds steady. And it has ranged from 35% to a high of 48% over the last 12 months. This is not an insignificant number of people. That means millions of our guests have been declining daily housekeeping. The rate at which our guests decline daily housekeeping service is nearly double what it was prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. Our guests are being abundantly clear with us about their preferences and their expectations. The fundamental reality is that COVID-19 has changed the way that hotel guests view cleaning services. The reasons for declining service really vary depending on the guest. For some, it's their desire for more privacy. For some, they're generally inclined to be more protective of their personal space. For some of our guests, they're still operating in an environment of heightened personal health and safety protocols. And whatever the reasons, whatever those justifications, we respect that. Our leisure travelers, on average, stay at our properties for 2.7 days. And this is a really important data point to keep in mind as we talk about things like statutorily required daily room cleaning. This is not a matter of not wanting to provide daily room cleaning service. We are providing daily room cleaning service. We do not incentivize our guests to decline daily room cleaning. It is provided to all of our guests unless the guest declines the service. It is incumbent on us as hospitality industry operators to account for and react to what our guests want and need from us. Daily room cleaning service required by the emergency response statute implemented 3 years ago is just not aligned with the practical reality of today. Moreover, we have procedures in place to implement room cleaning service, even in cases where a guest has declined. And for MGM Resorts, these particular procedures are a result of our collective bargaining agreements that we have in place. If a guest has declined room cleaning services for 48 consecutive hours, measured by the first time the service was declined, we will bypass the do not disturb sign and require that the room be cleaned. However, due to the average length of stay, again, 2.7 days, it is not that often that this procedure needs to be actioned. In addition, to the extent that a room is found to be particularly dirty, there is a process available to our guest room attendants to provide them with assistance cleaning the room or reduction in the workload associated so that they have additional time to clean the room as required. We're in the business of hospitality. The guests vote with their pocketbooks, and they choose where to stay, including whether or not to visit Las Vegas. According to data released by the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, Strip occupancy in February year to date is 83.2%, which is down 3.4% from February of 2019. We are thankful for a sustained recovery of Las Vegas's hospitality industry, but we recognize that we still have challenges, including labor challenges, that we are constantly trying to meet. A material issue we continue to prioritize is hiring and retention, in particular in operations roles such as guest room attendants. At the end of February of this year, we had more than 4,300 union guest room attendants on staff, and we are not including the Mirage and Cosmopolitan so that we can give you an accurate comparison. This number is 86% of our total in February of 2019. This is not a matter of intentional staffing on our part. We currently have more than 200 open guest room attendant positions, and we experience a guest room attendant turnover percentage of 14%. Our staffing levels and our ongoing efforts to maintain a properly configured workforce are reflective of a hospitality industry that overall is adapting to not just guest needs and expectations, but also employee needs and expectations. And this is something that we are constantly grappling with. So the notion that we are not prioritizing room cleanliness, or that we do not have proper resources in place to maintain room cleaning standards that our guests expect is just not accurate. Our ask of this committee and this legislature is simple and straightforward. There's no longer a reason to statutorily mandate resort hotels or any other public accommodations facilities to operate pursuant to a state of emergency that has now expired. It has been 3 years, and it is time to please implement a complete repeal of the provisions of SB 4. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and we're ready for questions if you have any.
Thank you so much. Any questions from committee members? Senator Titus?
Actually, it's not a question, it's more of a statement. Rarely in this building can you use the political process and common sense. That's kind of an oxymoron, but actually, this is a common sense bill, so thank you for bringing it forward.
Thank you very much. It's the Nevada way.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? Okay, well, I have questions. So, first and foremost, I want to make a few statements first before I move to my line of questioning. I think it's important to vet this bill and the policies before us. I think I want to start off just by mentioning my quick thank you to Senator Don Loop for bringing this in, of course, to Mr. Vasiliadis and to all the members, all the gaming operators are in the room. I think that the efforts that we are discussing today are not easy for any of us. And I think it's important for me just to say thank you to our gaming operators and to our workers that were on the front lines. I think about 2020 and the experiences that our families had to go through, including my own. My father, my uncles, my aunt, my cousins are all casino workers, and they were the ones that were on the front lines. And so I take the conversation that we're talking about today very seriously because they were impacted by the legislation. I think with regards to COVID-19, I have said on the record before that we did not prepare adequately. That has been the sentiment that I have shared. I believe through the provisions of Senate Bill 209 that we passed and we did the study, I do not buy the notion nationwide that we could not have prepared for this moment. We could have prepared for this moment. We could have done a little bit better to prepare for the public health ramifications as a system entirely. And I think that is something that we have to carry with us with this particular bill and with other legislation. I think all of us recognize the importance of why public health matters and what we can do to move forward. My position has always been with this bill and with other bills that we should not take our state backwards. We should always try to find some avenues, whether it's with public health or any provisions, to keep the narrative moving forward because we went through devastation already, and we deserve to find ideas that bring us all in some way together to push forth on where we would not return back to such situation. In the similar breath, I understand that we are in a different time. We have reached, for this particular disease, a level of endemicity. But I want to make it clear to the folks that are listening in that COVID-19 will not be the last pandemic. We will have many more pandemics, many more diseases that we have to prepare for, and we should be ready for them. And so when we think about this particular bill, I come from the perspective that we should have conversations, which is what my questions will be today, as to what we can do as an industry and as a state to move forward on that narrative. Whether that's codifying in law how we respond to emergency preparedness or for other future diseases, whether it's COVID-19, Legionnaires, the flu, what have you. We're going to approach this situation regardless of how this bill comes forward And I think it's an opportunity for all of us of what the finished product will be. And I think that is what my testament has been in terms of my viewpoint for this bill. So my questions are more directed towards the industry for the folks as we go through this process. But I think it's important just to clarify that what my position has been before I start my questions. So my first question is, in talking about the preparation of future pandemics, I think it's important to note, as I mentioned, we want to be able to move our state forward. So have there been any discussions from the industry to codify public health provisions for future pandemics, and is there any hesitation to do that?
I don't think there's any hesitation, Chair. I
Name
think
for the
as
record,
a-
please.
Billy Vasiliadis, Nevada Resort Association, Representative Nevada Resort Association. Chair, we have not actually had sort of planning for the next pandemic, partially because we're just rolling out of this one. And so the efforts for recovery, the efforts to get back to normal, the efforts to rebuild our infrastructure have taken up quite a bit of the current plan. However, having said that, I do think we learned some things coming out of the past pandemic, and I think you're right, that there needs to be some preparation. The challenge that we have is, well, one, we didn't have anything like that for 100 years, theoretically, right? Now, and I read, I think, many of the references you've read, and that this is going to continue to sort of morph and change, or new viruses will come along for a variety of reasons. Completely understood. I think number one lesson we probably learned from this is the importance of flexibility and quick movement. I mean, the controlling health authorities, whether it's the health districts, whether it's the state, need to have the ability to move quicker, research quicker, be able to make some decisions quicker. I think putting things like this in state law, for example, it was the right thing when it happened. The challenge with this is y'all meet every 2 years, or else then there's a special session need, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We have some brilliant healthcare minds in this state. Like I mentioned, Dr. Pandori, the state epidemiologist. We've got really smart medical folks at the health districts around the state. I think getting with them to create some response protocols would be a really good thing to do, and I can commit for the industry that we'd participate earnestly, transparently, openly, and happily, because none of us want to live through this again.
And if Rochelle Wynn, for the record, if I can respond, we've had these conversations offline about public health. I know that it is a passion of yours, and I know that is. And so part of the reason that I felt compelled to be a part of this is I want to follow what our recommendations are from our public health officials. And in fact, when I reached out to some of them you inspired me, actually. I reached out to them and I said, hey, let's talk about some of these provisions that were in SB 4. And they kind of laughed and were like, oh, we don't even collect that. That's just not where we are. And so I agree. At the time when we were determining this was the science that guided us. It is not the science that guides us now. And I don't think there's any public health official that would tell you that these 3 provisions that are tied to the sunset of this bill as a whole has anything to do with public health, has anything to do with public safety, has anything to do with what we now know in 2023, 3 years later, about COVID. Because it's just not the case. And I'm glad. I'm glad that we have therapeutics. I'm glad that people got vaccinated. I'm glad that at the time this saved lives and saved our industry, saved our workers, saved our, community from this pandemic. So I think it is important to do that. And I know that you have brought bills in the public health space, whether it is increasing funds to our public health districts to make them more accessible. But again, we can talk about what needs to be done through the legislative process, but I think we also have a responsibility to go back and follow our bills that we do pass to make sure that they are consistent with what the intent was when they were drafted.
Thank you. So I think let's keep the conversation going. So I wanted to make that clear division line between the difficulty of public health adaptation, right, versus daily room cleaning, which will be the separate questions that I have. Because I think that, and I come from the public health perspective, that we should modify and change our positions in instances, right? We should have frameworks to operate together for preparation, whether it's involving gaming operators or other industries to prepare for emergency response. that should be an important process that from my personal perspective, we should codify that or have some level of mechanism as to how we come together. Because there should be some level of safety net where we, even in the interim, even outside of this building, it just becomes a norm. Whether it's instances of protecting violence or a disease. There are these situations that we will encounter, and as a community, we should actively participate and practice for when those encounters occur. But I think it's important to understand, as what Senator Nguyen mentioned, which is there are provisions that we have to be able to readily adapt, and I think that's an important distinction. So then that begs the question, so if there is an ability to codify standards, what will that look like? And I'm happy to work with you offline for that moment so that workers and gaming operators and the community can be put together and the coordination could exist beyond this moment, beyond the endemicity of COVID. So now I want to pivot towards talking about daily room cleaning, because I think that's an important question. So top line question. Did daily room cleaning exist as part of the standard policy before COVID-19?
Before COVID-19, customers had a choice, and they could be incented to pass on daily room cleaning. This did not start with COVID. In fact, Chair, one of the reasons daily room cleaning or being able to opt out of daily room cleaning was also at some point part of an environmental and sustainability discussion. The use of water, the use of detergents, et cetera, going downstream. So some, and I'm not saying that was everybody's mode, but I will tell you that some companies early on, adapting to that idea of wanting to build a sustainable, a more green property, et cetera, adopted that. But passing on daily room cleaning, opting out of daily room cleaning was in place prior to COVID-19.
Okay, thank you. So I understand the choice question as to if the customer chooses not to do so, they can put the sign. But I just wanted to understand what was done before COVID-19. As many folks know in this room, I was not here for the discussion of SB4, but it's important as part of this bill process. So my understanding is we had these practices in place. COVID happened. We came back during a special session to address the science that we had known. And now that that science has shifted, we are now in the period of trying to figure out where does this all fit together. What we're hearing today in this presentation is where does daily room cleaning stand and what is the future of what we had prior to that? Because in some breath, right, what the opposition will say and what I've had communicate to me is we're making record-breaking profits, employees deserve some level of instance of security, etc. Whether or not we disagree with it or agree with it in the committee, it's an important distinction. So I think for me, in thinking about the original intent, do you happen to know right now what percentage of properties offer daily room cleaning as the standard post COVID-19? I know that there was an opposition letter submitted by Wynn Resorts that says at our property we will continue this service as part of our 5-star class. Is that? I mean, do you have a percentage as to what that looks like in the industry right now?
I don't, Chair, but I think you'll see from the presence on this bill that it's a great majority, and in talking to our clients, I don't, and the letter I believe you're referring to, they're not necessarily against this bill. I think they're still supporting their colleagues. It's just that there are certain, like, 5-star ratings, et cetera, which require different things, and it includes levels of staffing, it includes levels of cleanliness, I mean, quality of restaurants. There's a lot of qualifications that go into attaining that rating.
And so just for clarification, the majority of the practices that were before COVID-19, the majority of the operators have resulted back to the same operations if it's feasible. Is that the general sentiment for many of the
Yes,
industry?
we're allowed to go back to being able to inform our customers of their option. I believe most of the properties, in fact, a great majority, will take advantage of that, yes.
Thank you. And then this is just one quick question. Whether or not daily room cleaning is addressed in this bill, is there still a commitment to regain or at least go back to what the standard was for daily room cleaning in the industry for what was established pre-COVID-19, if there is a disparity of what the levels are now?
I don't know that there's going to be a disparity from COVID to post or pre-COVID? Is that what you're asking?
Let me rephrase the
Okay,
question.
thank you.
Yes. There is a sentiment that what was pre-established pre-COVID-19 is not the same standard that we have today. And there's a request, at least from, and this is not me speaking, we will hear this in the opposition and we will ask the same questions to them. But there's a request in saying that there has been a disparity where the same level of, I don't want to say care, but the same level of service is not being delivered to what we have now, and there is a request to make it to the same balance as what we had before. So is there an industry commitment to at least reach the same level of service that we had for, at least particularly for daily room cleaning?
Well, respectfully, Chair, it's sort of an industry must. It's how we keep our customers, whether it's the rooms, whether it's the restaurants, whether it's how pleasant our valet is and accessible our parking is. All that goes into that product is necessary to be the #1 convention destination in the world and the top domestic destination. And the same goes for the entire state, our Reno properties, Tahoe properties, et cetera. If you're not providing that level of service, there are so many options today, right, in the products that we offer that we'll lose. So I think it's not only a commitment, again, it's a must and it's a necessity. And Chair, with your permission, I don't understand what the whole profit discussion is, because this is also an industry that tanked for 2 years as a result of COVID, that is reinvested heavily to be able to recover from COVID. You know, you look at the Formula Ones and the Super Bowls and everything that's gone into this destination, the money that's been spent in northern Nevada to rejuvenate those properties. I mean, there's been a yeoman's effort. And let me say this. Also, I'd like to echo what you said. The heroes of our front line, our workers, were a tremendous contributor to this recovery. But I guess I don't understand why we're conflating profits and this and that with, are we going to keep a COVID era, the last that I'm aware of, COVID era protocol in law, or, as you appropriately brought up, is could we begin to discuss how to prepare better? I apologize if I didn't mean that this legislature had no role, but one of the things we found out on the front lines in the middle of that was that everything was so constricted and restricted in terms of authorities, #1. #2, if there's anything this legislature could do, for example, to really move communication faster among the health districts from the state to the locals, so there isn't burdens one place or another, but there's a free-flowing ability to know, to maybe reach some consensus on treatment or on prevention or on mitigation or on testing or whatever the vocabulary will be when that happens. So I didn't mean to imply there's no role for the legislature. It's just I could tell you firsthand, one of the problems was how quickly we can move as that started to evolve, because we knew nothing when it started. And we were responding to rumors and, you know, and changes of the day. And so, yeah, certainly we would love to support and contribute to a long-term policy on public health.
Thank you, sir. You know, I think that's I greatly appreciate your response, because the reason why I started my line of questioning with the public health measures first was I think we are going to hear sentiments as to how do we ensure that we maintain the standards from what we had before. And I think that's where this bill becomes a little bit convoluted, which is if we need to modify how our adaptation to public health is for at least what we have right now, what is currently outdated, how we move forward, those are valuable conversations that we should definitely most entertain. Where this comes to play is the level of service as to what we're experiencing now towards endemicity. I want to just touch point on one last thing, maybe one last question, labor costs. I know the representative from MGM mentioned, you know, what is going on, et cetera. So if you can touch point on that in terms of where we're at, workforce shortages, et cetera, that would be great.
Yeah, well,
Absolutely.
you want to?
Oh, Billy, go ahead. Nope, go ahead, and I'm happy to add it.
The shortages, as I said, are in the entire, not just hospitality industry, in most public-facing positions. You know, you hear about shortages in law enforcement and all sorts of places where we're trying to recruit people. Local governments are having a hard time getting people who want to come into the office. So I would say that's challenge one. In terms of I think by necessity, cost of the workforce has gone up. Cost of labor has gone up to be able to attract people in. I know companies have offered signing bonuses. I know they've offered other retention rewards and awards, because it's not just getting folks to come, it's getting them to stay that's become a challenge. So I think, Chair Donate, respectfully, I don't know that there's a single answer. I think each company has taken it on differently, and of course, as Ms. Molino said, they're also operating under the collective bargaining agreement and meeting the requirements of that.
And Marilyn Dondero Loop for the record. If I could just weigh in here really quick, this does nothing but take us back to before. I mean, we're not instituting something different. We're just not doing what we decided we should be doing during the pandemic. So while I recognize that some of our colleagues were not here, we were literally making choices because we were closed. We were literally making choices between funding kids' prosthetic legs or, autism, or what were we going to cut next? We were literally having to make decisions like that. And the other piece to that is I know that we've had numerous discussions in every committee about the amount of vacancies that we have right here in the state. I know DMV's like 50%. We have, less than 50% of our highway police, our state police. So with that being said, I don't think anybody's trying to cut jobs. Anybody's trying to think about that. We have an industry, and Ms. Molina and Mr. Vasiliadis are absolutely right. Every hotel is trying to do the best they can to get you or me or the next customer in there. So if I want to go to a 5-star hotel, or I want to go to Circus in between, and they're right across the street from each other, it doesn't matter. I'm going to get what Las Vegas has customized as world-class service.
Thank you. Ms. Molina, did you want to touch on the labor cost questions, please?
Chair, in response to your direct question, I was just going to note again the point from my testimony that we have more than 200 openings currently for guest room attendants. And so from our perspective, it's not a matter of us trying to have fewer, it's that we can't rather attract enough. In terms of the labor cost question, at MGM Resorts, our guest room attendants are part of the culinary union, and so our labor wages are governed by the collective bargaining agreement.
Thank you so much. I think that concludes my questioning, trying to look at my committee members. Okay, we will go ahead and move to testimony in support of this bill. So again, we encourage folks to keep their testimony to 2 minutes each. We're going to set the timer, and so we'll have folks come in. We might have to recess within the next few minutes, so we'll see how far we can go, and then we'll keep going. Ms. Valentine, please proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Donate, Vice Chair Nguyen, Senator Dondero Loop, and members of the committee. My name is Virginia Valentine. I'm representing the Nevada Resort Association today in full support of SB 444. I, along with many of those who are joined by us today, testified in support of SB 4 back in 2020. And at the time, in the context of liability protections and cleaning standards for the pandemic, we think that was appropriate. We want to thank also the bill sponsor for her work on this and recognizing that it's time for Nevada to join the rest of the world by removing one of the last remaining pandemic response mandate. Gratefully, the pandemic has ended. Nevada's emergency declaration is over. President Biden is ending the national emergency, and the World Health Organization Director General is talking about the end of an international public health emergency. So thankfully, today is not the summer of 2020 when SB 4 was signed into law. Looking back at the first days of the pandemic, no one knew anything about the virus or its spread. Our members, many of them, closed before they were ordered to do so. Almost all of them hired national experts on epidemiology and health and safety protocols and developed their own public safety plans for their resorts and operated in some cases beyond what was required. The resorts were closed then for an unprecedented 78 days. The virus, as we all know, itself changed, the standards changed, the guidelines changed, the CDC changed guidelines over and over. And I think the couple people mentioned the flexibility to change and to be in a dynamic situation like that and adjust the guidelines, the requirements in real time to the changes in the virus and our situation are extremely important. The industry partnered also with the state and local health districts and invested millions of dollars in health and safety protocols with the highest standards for cleaning and infection. Every step along the way more was learned and new tools were developed to fight it, and the industry did everything it could to protect its employees and its guests. Unfortunately, because of SB 4, Nevada continues to be tied to mandates that were developed at the very height of the crisis. Today, the scientific community agrees that excessive cleaning requirements are not consistent with the current science on COVID transmission mitigation. However, we have not been able to pivot to the latest guidance, which is much different today than it was in the summer of 2020. I just want to thank you all on daily cleaning. I just like to say that all of the members, we do respect the do not disturb signs on the door. Was that my 2 minutes, or is that your call to another meeting? I'm really confused here. I don't know where we left off, but I will say, just as a kind of a pickup on that, daily cleaning, all of the resorts offer daily cleaning. All of them respect a do not disturb sign on the door. So again, Chair Donate, thank you very much for your time and indulgence, and might possibly going over 2 minutes.
Thank you so much, Ms. Valentine. We will have to pause testimony at this time, Mr. Lassane. I will do something really quickly before we pause because I know people have to leave the committee room and et cetera. So what I will do is I will ask folks that are in support of this bill to rise and then sit down, do opposition, and then sit down, and then neutral, in case if folks have to leave, et cetera, by the time we come back. So for folks that are in support of this bill, if you can please rise, both in Carson City and Las Vegas. All right, and sit down. And then we'll do folks in opposition to this bill, if you could please rise, both in Carson City and Las Vegas. All right, and then we'll do neutral. You can please rise if you're neutral. Okay. We are going to go ahead and take recess. We will continue back with support testimony upon, the committee will return once the session starts. All right, welcome back everyone to Senate HHS. We will continue on with testimony in support of Senate Bill 41. Where we left off was we had started testimony, so just as a reminder, we will be capping testimony for each of them. 30 minutes in support, 30 minutes opposition, 30 minutes neutral. We only had one person speak so far in for support testimony, so the remainder time is of 28 minutes. So we will begin the time clock, so folks that are in support of Senate Bill 441 can please make their way forward. And then Las Vegas as well, and we will start.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Andrew Diss. I'm a Senior Vice President for Morello Gaming. We operate the Sahara on Las Vegas Boulevard and the Grand Sierra in Reno. Mr. Chairman, some of your questions earlier were related to workforce pressures and how we take care of our team members. And just want to give you a quick example of how we take care of our guest room attendants. So in addition to the wage they make, we also pay a bonus based off of the amount of rooms that they clean every day. The average for guest room attendants is about 30 to 45 minutes to clean a standard size room. It's a little bit more if it's a suite. And so that works out to 1.5 to 2 rooms per hour. And in addition to the full cleaning that you do in between when different guests are checking in, checking out, you also do a cleaning if they request it mid-stay. And that is something that we offered prior to the pandemic as well. SB4 really turned into a hindrance to hiring for us. And we doubled that bonus that we were offering prior to the pandemic per room in order to attract more people. And even by doing that, we have still struggled to meet our demands. There have been times, and it was mentioned by Mr. Vasiliadis earlier, that we've had to take rooms offline. We've had to take entire floors offline because we have not been able to meet that cleaning need for our guests. So I just wanted to share that perspective of what our team members go through, what our guest room attendants go to help clear up some of the questions you had earlier. Thank you.
Quick question in regards to the statements that you just made. So the sentiments that we will hear in opposition is the longer length of time could result in the rooms being more messier. So is that something that you've had conversations with your own housekeepers as to if they are able to do daily room cleaning, they wouldn't run into that situation and they would be able to meet the quotas that you have established for bonuses? Is that a conversation that you've had within your own entity?
We've had some of those
Name for the record, please.
Andrew Diss with Morello Gaming. We've had some of those conversations at both our properties, but it really comes down to the needs and wants of our guests. And as was mentioned before, sometimes the guests, they just don't want it mid-stay for whatever reason. Maybe they're out all night and they're sleeping during the day, or they just want towels, or they just want the bed made. They don't want the full cleaning to happen across the room. But should they want that, then we provide that every time it's requested.
Good evening, Chairman Donate and members of the committee. For the record, Erin Midby, Vice President of Government Affairs for Boyd Gaming. Boyd Gaming is in strong support of SB 441, and I want to thank the sponsor, Senator Marilyn Dondero-Loop and Rochelle Wen, for their work on this as well. You've heard some of this, but I think it's worth repeating. When SB 4 was passed in August of 2020, it was the height of the pandemic when much about the COVID-19 virus was still unknown and not yet contemplated. Back then, we didn't know yet how it spread, vaccines were not available, and it was thought that individuals could only get COVID once, just to name a few things. Fast forward to April of 2023, and we know so much more than we did back then, and COVID-19, as well as our response, has evolved significantly. We've had numerous variants, vaccines and boosters are widely available, CDC guidelines have changed frequently, and we have had additional tools and protocols for reducing spread of the virus. Put simply, we understand COVID much better now and how it is spread. The sole goal of SB 4 was to keep employees and customers safe from COVID, and that remains our top priority. And it was said earlier, but we're nothing without our team members, as we saw during the COVID shutdown. They are the lifeblood of our properties. However, today, the provisions of SB 4 are outdated and ineffective in protecting our team members. It only creates a burden to those it was originally intended to help and keep safe. SB 4 was intended to sunset, but the metrics included a trigger that sunset are not collected or even reported in some cases. SB 4 is not tied to CDC guidelines and puts additional burdens on employers and employees alike that are no longer required anywhere else. The provisions of SB 4 are no longer necessary to keep employees and visitors safe from COVID. We have sufficient and adequate protocols in place to address cleanliness and safety in resort hotels. In a time where every industry everywhere is facing workforce and hiring issues, SB 4 only exacerbates those challenges. Our company is no exception. Currently, we have a shortage of guest room attendants among many other positions, and we cannot run our properties full each day. With the requirements of SB 4, our properties that are not fully staffed must schedule for lower occupancies midweek so that they can run at maximum occupancy on weekends where we get the most demand. We would urge the committee to support 441 and repeal these onerous and outdated provisions of SB 4. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Giannate, Bradley Mayor, partner at Argento Partners, representing the Southern Nevada Health District today. Southern Nevada Health District supports this bill as it repeals the section regarding SNHD's requirement to inspect resorts every 2 months and hotels with at least 200 rooms every 3 months. That is opposed to the cleaning standard, or excuse me, the for the COVID cleaning standards, as opposed to the pre-pandemic statutory requirement of once a year. This requirement has represented a significant mandate to SNHD and does divert environmental health staff time away from the myriad of responsibilities that they undertake. The requirement to inspect in this bill is tied to the 5% positivity rate, as opposed to the governor's executive order, which did sunset other provisions of this bill. That rate is no longer instructive because of the prevalence of at-home testing, and the federal public health emergency for COVID-19 ends on May 11th, and we will no longer receive that data after that point in time. So we thank you for your time.
Mr. Mayor, I have a quick question for you. What are the public health provisions right now in terms of emergency preparedness that the industry, that the health districts or other folks do to coordinate between different industries? Are there certain mechanisms that are already in place? Do you practice pandemic response, et cetera? As we discussed earlier, is that something that's already codified, or is that something that we should be considering?
I'm unsure of the specifics of that. I can follow up with a subject matter expert to get back to you on that question.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hello, committee. My name's Elise Monroy Marsala. I'm with Bell's Case Government Affairs, and I'm here today on behalf of the Nevada Public Health Association. The Nevada Public Health Association stands with the Health District in support of the sunset provisions to this bill. The Nevada Public Health Association also supports investments in building out the state's public health infrastructure, so Nevada can be prepared, better prepared and better positioned the next time this happens. Nevada Public Health Association is the state's membership organization for Nevada's leading public health experts. I'll actually say I'm a proud member of NPHA, and in 2021 I was elected by my peers NPHA Leader of the Year. NPHA is a great organization. NPHA would encourage any and all of Nevada's industries to engage with us and our subject matter experts. So private sector and various industries can be better positioned the next time a pandemic spreads out, and they are able to protect the public. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Donate, members of the committee. My name is Carlos Lassane. I'm the Regional Vice President of Government Relations and Community Affairs for Caesars Entertainment. Thank you for allowing me to read my testimony. When the COVID-19 virus descended on Nevada, it devastated families, took loved ones from us, and a great deal of our businesses and industries came to a complete halt. Nevada's gaming hospitality industry, as well as all non-essential businesses, were shut down March 18, 2020, to slow the spread. We reopened in June of 2020. Legislative Bill SB 4 was passed during the 32nd special legislative session using then the current guidelines of the CDC on how to provide additional protections for our workers and underscore to our guests that we were doing everything in our power to create a safer environment. The gaming and hospitality industry also implemented an aggressive vaccination mandate for all of our employees and set forth strong health and safety protections and protocols for our guests. The membership of the Nevada Resort Association participated in daily and weekly meetings with county leadership, public safety, health and human services, regional health departments, and the governor's office. In the last 3 years, the medical experts have learned a great deal about how this virus is transmitted. In the beginning, I'm sure I wasn't the only one washing my groceries and disinfecting my mail. But since that time, epidemiologists discovered that this is an airborne virus. It is not transmitted from contact with surfaces. The provisions of SB4 were well-intentioned, and this bill was conceived at a time when the facts were unknown to us, but now's the time for us to move on. Medical experts continue to have the vocabulary debate, pandemic versus endemic. But the medical community now agrees that surface contact is not how this virus is spread. Additionally, the spread and the severity of cases have subsided, and the data supports that. The lingering requirements of SB4 are no longer necessary. It's time to move forward. I urge you all to support SB 441. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Doñate. My name is Stephen Esquaga with Peppermill Casinos. I also want to thank the rest of the committee and also sponsor Senator Dondero Loop and Senator Nguyen. This is a critical bill to our industry. It's actually really hard. 3 years since we were on a conference call with Governor Sisolak to prepare for the statewide shutdown that was imposed. It still feels surreal when we think back to shutting our doors, closing our operations, and saying goodbye to our employees and coworkers and guests, and wondering what was in store for everyone. After being closed for just under 80 days, we successfully brought back our team members and were able to safely open to the public that was very anxious and ready for some sense of normalcy. The following year plus was one of adjustments to various mandates, adjustments to directives, adjustments to declarations. It has been a challenging, to say the least. SB 441 is another much needed and overdue adjustment. Now is the time for state leaders such as yourselves to come together with the leading industry in the state to work together. SB 4 is outdated, unnecessary COVID legislation. Our cleaning standards, both in the industry and at the Peppermill, will not be compromised. Our company's commitment to cleanliness and safety is expected from our guests, is expected from our employees. It is not something, though, respectfully, that needs to be legislated. Separate from cleaning standards, and Mr. Vasiliotis covered the challenges operationally, the other area that's been extremely challenging for our area is just in the human resource aspect. The increased requirements in testing, callbacks, PTO management. It's been challenging and a distraction to the purpose of what our HR department is there for, and that's to take care of our employees. Thank you again for your time and your support on SB 441. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Dunyate and committee. For the record, my name is Joelle Gutman-Dodson, representing the Washoe County Health District, today in support of SB 441. As you might all be aware, the pandemic was a very difficult time for the health districts. We are charged with disease investigation, contract tracing, testing, vaccine administration, and dissemination. Every employee at Washoe County Health District was pulled into new duties overnight, and when SB 4 happened in the 32nd special session in the dark of the night, it was a necessary but unfunded mandate that put further strain on us as a health district. As a result of the shift of testing, we can no longer accurately measure the positivity rate in the community, which is one of the main reasons we did additional inspections and cleaning standards. We support elimination of COVID regulations and inspections of certain hotels and casinos because we believe our existing laws and regulations, which were in place before the pandemic and are currently in place right now, provide for the safe management and public of public and environmental health matters within gaming properties when enforced and followed. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Andrew McCam, the Executive Director of the Franchise Auto Dealers Association. I'll be very brief. Come to this table in support of this bill. I want to thank Senator Dondero Loop. Our support is that we believe this is a key step to help our friends and colleagues in the resort industry to be able to continue to move forward and go back to some semblance of normalcy pre-COVID. So thank you, sir, for your time, and have a good evening.
Thank you so much. Anyone else willing to testify in support of this bill? Anyone in Las Vegas? And anyone virtually?
If you'd like to testify in support on SB 441, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue.
Good evening, Chairman Dunyotti and members of the committee. My name is Barry Lieberman, Barrylieberman.
Please proceed.
Chair, it looks like the caller dropped. Would you like me to proceed to the next one?
Yes, please, and let's try to come back if they can.
Good afternoon, Chair Donate, Vice Chair Wynn, Senator Dondero Loop, and members of the Health and Human Services Committee. My name is Pete Boyd, and I'm the General Manager at the Venetian Resort in Las Vegas. The Venetian supports the repeal of SB 4 and supports the passage of this current Senate Bill 441. We agree with the comments of the Nevada Resort Association and the leaders of other properties that have already provided testimony. SB 4 was passed in response to a global pandemic, which has thankfully passed its peak. The federal government and our governor both recognize the emergency of COVID-19 has faded. The provisions of SB 4 were targeted to respond to that emergency and have now outlived their usefulness. SB 4 goes beyond requiring merely daily housekeeping. SB 4 provides explicit instructions for how daily housekeeping should be completed, which are directly connected to the threat of COVID-19 at the time the law was passed. These specific cleaning standards no longer serve their original purpose given today's understanding of COVID. More importantly, these standards do not add value to the guest experience, do not markedly improve protection against COVID, and are an operational burden for our housekeeping team members. During the closure of the Las Vegas Strip, the Venetian retained and paid wages to all of our team members, including housekeepers. Despite all of our efforts to keep talented staff, at times throughout the pandemic, we suffered a shortage of housekeeping staff after the Strip reopened. Our hiring of housekeepers is continual, and like others have stated, we continue to suffer shortages in staffing. We urge you to pass SB 441 and repeal SB 4. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. My name is Brian Wachter. I'm the Senior Vice President at the Retail Association of Nevada. We appreciate the opportunity to be here in support of Senate Bill 441, representing an industry that never closed, not one day during the entire COVID pandemic, really allows us to have an understanding of what we were going through when those regulations were changing by the hour, they were changing by the day, they were changing by the week, and our ability to remain flexible as a business community and certainly as an industry is really kind of what powered Nevada's ability to respond to the COVID pandemic and the following crisis with the speed and flexibility to make sure that we were saving as many of our citizens as we could, while understanding that we had an economic situation in Nevada that needed to keep going because there are people that rely on those services, and they rely on the tax revenue, and they rely on government being able to function, which requires businesses to be able to be open. We need to recognize going forward that flexibility that the other industries enjoyed, that the resort industry did not, is something that we should put in the column of not repeating during the next pandemic. We take very seriously our responsibility to protect our customers and to protect our employees. And we all remember the days where we thought that one-way grocery store aisles was something that was going to have an impact on being able to protect COVID. And we know now, just like washing your groceries, that isn't the best way to be able to stop the COVID pandemic. And we appreciate having the flexibility through that 2-year period to be able to recognize that and evolve our response to be able to make sure that we had the fastest, most effective way to keep Nevadans safe. And for those reasons that we would implore you to support Senate Bill 441.
Good afternoon, Chair Donate and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mary Beth Seawald, President and CEO of the Vegas Chamber. The Vegas Chamber is in support of Senate Bill 441. For historical perspective, the Chamber was also a leading advocate for the passage of Senate Bill 4 in August of 2020. It made sense at the time to adopt these provisions into state law when we were uncertain about how we were going to move forward from the initial effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. However, since that special session, we've developed a much better understanding of how COVID is transmitted. Vaccines and antiviral medications are readily available to the public. The economy is fully reopened, and many COVID standards have expired or have been repealed at the state, local, and federal levels of government. The state lifted its emergency declaration on COVID-19 on May 20th, 2022. That is why we believe the daily cleaning provisions that were adopted with the passage of SB 4 should be repealed. This legislation reflects the progress that we have made against COVID-19. Keeping these measures in state law contradicts the progress that we have made in our public health response to COVID-19. As you know, many of the COVID-19 reporting elements are no longer available, and it is only hindering our largest industry. These provisions are also labor-intensive, costly, inefficient, requiring more water resources and supplies, and burdensome to the hospitality industry. That is why these provisions should have an expiration date, as the COVID civil litigation and immunity does in state law, which was also adopted in the passage of SB 4. We believe that this bill is important as we move beyond the initial public health care response to COVID-19 and adapt as we have always done as a state. Thank you so much for your time and consideration in supporting Senate Bill 441. Thank you.
If you have recently joined the call and would like to testify in support on SB 441, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue.
Good evening, Chairman Dunyati and members of the committee. My name is Barry Lieberman. I guess I was cut off before. I am an attorney with the South Point Hotel and Casino. I echo the prior testimony of my colleagues. When SB 4 was enacted during a special session of the legislature, it was based on the best information available at that time. The requirements codified in statute were well-intentioned, and like many of our collective responses to the pandemic, we formulated those responses during an unprecedented time when so little was known about the disease. But as another colleague said in a letter, and I recommend that the Wynn Resorts letter be read by the committee because it has tremendous citations on why all these requirements are no longer recommended by the EPA or the CDC. We now know that COVID was an airborne virus and not on surfaces, and a lot of the specifics in SB 4 had to do with cleaning of surfaces. Excessive cleaning requirements are not consistent with the science and certainly are not consistent with good customer service. The health and safety of our customers and our employees is central to the operation of the South Point. Customers are given the choice of whether they want cleaning or fresh towels on a daily basis. Many, and I echo what Mr. Vasiliadis said, about 45% do not want daily cleaning and do not want even towels because many of our customers are very environmentally conscious. And so mandating things is not something that we want to see. We agree that our customers are the guides for us in terms of what type of cleaning they want. One other point I would like to make is in NRS 447, before the COVID section was put in, there are substantial health and safety regulations and sanitary regulations in that section. Specifically, it requires all rooms and toilets, bathrooms to be kept in sanitary and clean conditions. So all we're asking is let's go back to what the law was in 2019. Let's repeal SB 4, and we are in full support of SB 441. Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman Tanyate and members of the committee. My name is Tom Clark. I'm calling on behalf of the Reno Sparks Chamber of Commerce and our 2,300 members. For all of the reasons that have been stated previously, those important reasons stated previously, we join with our fellow speakers in support of Senate Bill 441. Thank you.
Chair, there are no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you so much. Last round for anyone in person for support. All right, let's move on to opposition. So, as I mentioned, now we will go ahead and invite the folks to present the opposition, and then we will move on to the testimony of opposition. So, the folks in Las Vegas, please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman Dunyate. Can you hear us here in Las Vegas?
Please proceed.
I just want to say thank you to the committee for allowing us to have this time. My name is Ted Papageorge, and I am the Secretary-Treasurer of the Culinary Workers Union. I'll have some comments, and also our President, Deanna Valles, and then we have some of our members that will be speaking in opposition to the bill for public comment. And we'll certainly take any questions that you all may have. Look, we agree that SB 4 was a landmark and necessary bill. The Culinary Union recognizes the need to repeal some of the provisions of SB 4 from the 2020 special session, but are strongly opposed to SB 441 as currently written because the Culinary Union believes that the Nevada Legislature should be protecting guest room attendants and also daily room cleaning. Daily room cleaning was a standard practice in Las Vegas prior to the pandemic. It was good policy during the pandemic, and it's still good policy. Protecting daily room cleaning means protecting workers, protecting Las Vegas's image, and protecting hotel customers. But the hotel industry changed the rules of the game since SB 4 was enacted. Since the pandemic, resort hotels in Nevada have cut costs to achieve downsizing of labor and certainly increasing profits, which means that the customers are still paying for first-class rooms but not getting first-class cleaning service. And we think ultimately Nevada's reputation of being a premier hospitality destination suffers. By cutting labor cost and service, companies are shirking their responsibility of providing good and sustainable jobs in our local community. And this is all happening in the midst of repeated record revenue. In 2022, Nevada's casinos generated a record-breaking $14.8 billion in gaming revenue. A Wall Street analyst, quote, expects gaming results from the Strip will grow in 2023 given the recovery in group meetings and convention business, a return of international visitation, and a heavy interest in November's Formula One Las Vegas Grand Prix, which has already attracted worldwide interest, unquote. Room rates are 30% higher, and service charges are at an all-time high. So what have some Nevada gaming companies done with their record earnings? MGM Resorts International spent close to $4.7 billion on share buybacks since 2021 and authorized another $2 billion. Caesars Entertainment Corporation spent $1.2 billion in 2022 to pay down its debt. And all of that's great. We applaud these efforts and the incredible work that's been put in this recovery. But you would think with all these profits, a lot more jobs for Nevadans would be created. But in fact, the gaming industry are only providing as many jobs as it did in the mid-1990s. Government data for employee levels, BLS, in February 2023 showed there were 148,400 Nevadans employed in the state's casino hotels. In January 1994, that figure was only 400 more at 148,800. So what's going on? We've got somehow record profit with less workers. As the New York Times reported in September 2020, even before the COVID-19 pandemic, quote, companies want to save money, so they created programs that discourage guests from requesting housekeeping, but have framed them as environmental initiatives and offered guest rewards points for skipping cleanings. The pandemic, as the housekeepers see it, has given these companies an opportunity to trim cleaning even more and cut their cost, unquote. The attempt to eliminate or reduce daily room cleaning is particularly concerning, we think, for Nevada's, and should be concerning for Nevada's resort hotel industry, especially for a resort hotel. The lack of daily room cleaning available as needed unnecessarily downgrades and degrades the kind of resort experience guests would expect when paying hundreds of dollars either on vacation or on a business trip. Recently, there was an outbreak of Legionnaire's disease at an off-strip property. God forbid we get that sort of outbreak on the Strip. The impact on Las Vegas could be devastating. Yet another reason why daily room cleaning is essential and needs to be part of the safety and security of tourists, guests, and the reputation of the #1 industry in Nevada. And a significant reduction due to the elimination of daily room cleaning would mean reductions of thousands of jobs and millions of lost wages for workers in our community, and a windfall profit for Nevada's resort hotels and companies. This would be an absolute blow to a group of workers who are majority women and women of color, who have already been economically most impacted as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So you might say, why are you here? Why aren't you negotiating for daily room cleaning in your union contracts? The answer is that we will. Prior to the pandemic, hospitality companies provided daily room cleaning with the standard "Do Not Disturb" card that all guests have available on their door. It was understood that Las Vegas is the entertainment capital of the world, and guests should expect full service and clean rooms. And all of you on this committee travel, and you've seen this avoidance of daily room cleaning. We respectfully disagree with the prior speakers that it's available whenever needed. Our 5-year contract with the employers expires June 1st this year, and we will be negotiating wage increases, health care and benefits, workplace safety language, and workload issues, including daily room cleaning. And we think they will be difficult issues. We think they will be strike issues, unfortunately, and we will fight for the best contracts for our members. But that's not enough. We claim in Nevada that we are the gaming gold standard, but in New Jersey, the legislature passed daily room cleaning standards. Many of the same companies that are opposing daily room cleaning in Nevada have hotel resorts in Atlantic City. Why is it good enough in New Jersey but not in Nevada? But we know that even with the state regulations, our sister local, Unite Here Local 54, was forced to the eve of a strike by the employers in order to resolve the daily room cleaning issue in their contract. In 2018, in contract negotiations in response to the October 1 mass shooting on the Strip, we made it very clear to the employers that the idea that someone could hole up in a room and refuse service day after day was unacceptable. We negotiated language on safety checks, safety buttons, but that was in addition to standard daily room cleaning. And we hope that that would help ensure that that horrific event would never happen again. We will fulfill our responsibilities in negotiations, and this is about workers and workload. But it's not just about that. You'll hear from other speakers, it's also about safety. It's about safety and the well-being of your constituents that work in these hotels. But it's not just about that. It's about protecting the industry that is the lifeblood of the state of Nevada and protecting our standing as the entertainment capital of the world. As legislators, you have a huge responsibility for the public good of our communities. As we said before, we agree that SB 4 items should be eliminated, repealed, discussed, but daily room cleaning is something that we think should stay. We ask you to oppose SB 441 as written or significantly change the law to ensure the daily room cleaning provisions of SB 4 stay intact. Thank you. I do appreciate your time, Chairman and committee. And I'm certainly available to answer any questions. We have our President, Deanna Valles, ready to speak.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Doñate and members of the committee. My name is Deanna Valles, and I am the president of the Culinary Union, and I'm proudly a former guest room attendant. Culinary Union is opposed to SB 441 as currently written because it eliminates daily room cleaning. A lack of daily room cleaning leads to job losses in the hospitality industry, makes work particularly more difficult for women, especially women of color, is inconsistent with the gaming industry's commitment to safety, and it is inconsistent with Nevada's promotion of being a premier travel destination. The potential job losses due to the elimination of daily room cleaning will have a disproportionate impact on communities of color. The 2021 Unite Here national report highlighted that the fact that 73% of hotel housekeepers in the U.S. are people of color. Any efforts to reduce housekeeping jobs in the hotel will further devastate the communities of color, which are still recovering from the disproportionate impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. The lack of daily room cleaning makes guest room attendant work more difficult and increase work-related suffering among a demographic that is primarily women of color. A hotel room that is not cleaned daily during the guest stay becomes harder to clean upon checkouts. A 2016 time motion study of an all-suite hotel found that the checkout rooms took 82% longer to clean than the stayover rooms. The American Hotel and Lodging Association has recommended that for pests, including bed bugs, the best prevention is daily inspection. Daily room cleaning is also a safety issue. Guest room attendants are often working alone in the hallways. If there isn't daily room cleaning, another safety issue is the lack of security guards patrolling the hallways. And we have heard reports of workers being attacked when they are by themselves on these floors. When there is a daily room clean, workers know their customers and are able to watch for each other because they are more guest room attendants on these floors. Another serious concern that I always on guest room attendants' mind is the threat of another mass shooting like October 1st. When a guest room attendant knocks on the door, they never know what is behind it. And they worry about opening that door to pile of weapons or worse. And we heard constantly from guest room attendants, union and non-union, about this issue. And we must do everything to prevent another October 1st, which includes ensuring that rooms are not locked up for days upon end. The lack of daily room cleaning is concerning for Nevada's reputation and standards as a premier travel destination. The New York Times reported in March 2023 that a travel industry observer asked about hotels in general. Why would you stay at full-service hotel if they strip all the benefits? We agree. Customers pay for full service, and they should get the quality services that hospitality workers provide. Otherwise, why wouldn't tourists just stay in Airbnb where they strip their own linens and change the sheets? Or is that the next thing in the gaming industry? Play back in their constant march towards cutting labor costs and increasing profits? Dirty rooms, hallways full of garbage, customers hunting down toilet paper and fresh towels. Is just not the standard which Nevada's travel industry should be? Culinary Union advocates every day for workers, union and non-union. The original law that was passed in 2020 protected all workers in the hospitality industry, and we continue to push for protections, which include non-union guest room attendants, including on the daily room cleaning issue. Daily room cleaning impacts tens of thousands of guest room attendants employed in downtown, the Strip, and throughout Las Vegas Valley and all the state of Nevada. In Nevada, 90% of people who responded in a March 23 poll say that they will support a law mandating daily room cleaning. Daily room cleaning is overwhelming popular in Nevada. And the Culinary Union urged the Nevada Legislature to protect working women and oppose SB 441. Now, if I may, I would like to introduce Gladys Blanco, a Culinary Union member and guest room attendant.
Come on, Gladys.
Come on, Gladys. Thank you very much.
My name is Gladys Blanco. I'm a guest room attendant at the Strip. I have been a Culinary Union member since 2012. I'm here today in opposition to SB 441. Daily room clean is a safety issue when it's been 3 or 4 days since have been signed to clean rooms and someone has been staying there all week. I never sure what I'm going to find behind the doors. I'm worried there could be a body, a total trash room, or worry will stash of guns like it was on the hotel room October 1st. As guest room attendants at the casino floors, we also see a lot of guests who get mad and they ask us why we haven't cleaned the rooms. Often the guests want their rooms clean and new towels, but if the company hasn't assigned this room to be clean, the guests have to look for us on the floors and get more like toilet paper. If I'm not cleaning rooms daily, then I assign to do only checkouts. Checkouts are when the guest is ended their stay and there is a deep cleaning of the rooms for the next guest. That takes more time and a lot of effort. When I don't have a mix of checkouts and stayovers, it's really hard to work. Do 13 to 15 rooms, all checkouts, it's overwhelming and it's exhausting. We get so tired that we don't have even want to cook dinner for our family when we get home. Please oppose to SB 441 and protect the working families like mine. Thank you.
We would be available for questions if there are any. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Committee members, are there any questions? Senator Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. So I see this strictly as a labor issue. That's why you're here. If the customers were so disenfranchised by not having their rooms cleaned on a daily basis, why are we seeing record numbers of visitors coming here to Nevada these days? If they're so unhappy.
Thank you, Senator Stone. Can you all hear me?
Yes, and name for the record,
Okay,
please.
So, for the record, Ted Papa George. So, we're the entertainment capital of the world here in Las Vegas. And this recovery is in effect. Somebody simply had to go to the Con Expo at the convention center to see that this recovery is in effect. And it's interesting that the room rates, even though you heard earlier from some of the experts that the actual folks checking in is a little bit lower than 2019, but the room rates are still much higher. And so the demand is there, the amenities are here, and Vegas is morphing into a new type of venue. We see Formula One, the Super Bowl, we see concerts, events, sporting events. So the demand is there. What we think is happening, Senator, is that the industry is looking at a bit of penny wise and pound foolish. That companies were quick to cut and out of desperation during COVID, but have found that folks work extra hard. And they wanted to save their jobs, they wanted to help save the company, they work extra hard. And companies are able to get folks to do more and able to do more with less. So folks are working hard to try to take care of the customer. But from our members, who are the folks on the ground, we think that this will backfire, and we think that the entertainment capital of the world needs to be full service. And we think this is short-sighted.
Thank you, and I appreciate your response. I think that obviously we didn't expect to have a pandemic, at least in my lifetime, once in 100 years, and so when COVID hit, you can certainly understand the knee-jerk reaction that the legislature would have had in 2019 to try to figure this thing out, including the safety of all the employees that I see here, the nice red shirt people. But if COVID has taught us anything, it's taught us that we can do business differently than we thought we could earlier. So a lot of businesses found out that they could do business remotely. It's kind of coincidental at the time that the pandemic hit that we had the invention of Zoom that came along. It could not have come at a better time for a company, right? We've seen air travel that was decreased. Amazon, everybody was getting all their groceries and products delivered by Amazon, which certainly has hurt bricks and mortar businesses. We endorsed telehealth programs that we are still considering maintaining today because we're able to reach populations in the rural areas that we weren't able to effectively provide care. So I know that we're dealing with many large corporations that have shareholders and depend on the officers of those corporations to maximize the profits for their shareholders. And I don't think that they would purposefully hurt their business by deleting the option for daily room service if they felt that it was not going to bring people back to their hotels. I happen to own some Airbnbs. We don't go in and service the rooms every single day. One, because the people that rent them want to have privacy. They don't want people coming in. And we, of course, clean it and sanitize it the day after the guests leave. And we have people that stay 2 days, 3 days. In fact, we have one that just, for the first time, signed up for 1 day, which we usually don't do. And And I heard a statistic that 93% of Nevadans support daily room cleaning. I would imagine a lot of that is probably your membership, because I don't think that the public sitting at home is thinking that we got a big problem here in Nevada if we don't go clean the hotel rooms every single day. And I find it difficult to understand that a hotel would ration toilet paper or wouldn't provide towels or wouldn't provide daily service in their rooms if a customer so directed it. But you can't criticize the companies for trying to reduce costs by offering incentives to have a prospective visitor opt into not having daily service for points or a reduced room rate or whatever they do to have to get customers to come in there. So, I mean, I certainly understand your plight. You have people that are used to working every single day that want to clean the rooms every single day, but maybe the service levels that customers expect have changed, and the corporations are just adapting to this changes. We've all adapted to changes with COVID-19. So I appreciate your testimony, but could you just give me more concrete evidence as to why we have to have this every single day? You mentioned it's a health issue. To me, it's a health issue, which could be a new health issue every day, that a person that is cleaning a room goes into a room to clean it up and might find a different virus or problem. I heard the issue of bed bugs. Bed bugs is a pretty serious issue. Whether a guest has been there for 1 day or 3 days, and they're awfully hard to eradicate. I'd be curious to know what the incidence of bed bugs is in the hotels. But do you have any idea why New Jersey adopted daily cleaning as opposed to where you think Nevada may go with this bill?
For the record, Ted Papa George. Thank you, Senator. Senator Stone. Look, there's certainly a place for Airbnbs of the world and the small operators. You called yourself mom and pop yourself, if I recall, in another hearing. And companies certainly, we understand companies maximizing profit. That's the nature of the business. And, you know, we've all went through this horrific pandemic. As somebody mentioned, it was a 100-year event, but now we expect this to happen more often. So, look, we all were there, and most of us lived through it. Some of our relatives and family members did not. So we all recognize that, and I wouldn't look at it as a knee-jerk reaction. And we think this was appropriate legislation and was the right thing. And we fought very hard for SB 4. And I just want to say again that we recognize that there are certainly parts of it that are no longer relevant. We're completely in agreement with that. But I can tell you that we think New Jersey enacted daily room cleaning because it's just good policy. And it's a long-term look at maintaining and protecting a healthy industry. And look, I'm not going to speak for the companies. They were here and they spoke for themselves, Senator. We just see what we see with our members are working on the front lines. But what we've seen financially is that, you know, these are Wall Street driven companies, and short-term mandated short-term profits are the lifeblood of these massive companies. And if they're not able to produce that, they're not able to get the financing, and, you know, leadership gets voted out. So look, we're not hotel operators. We're certainly not even like yourself, that you know, a smaller operator that has the expertise you have. But we think we have a responsibility here that these companies, we have to be part of looking at the long-term health of this industry and the long-term health of our community. And then the second thing I would say is that equally to the issue of just providing the standards that Las Vegas and this gaming industry in Nevada should provide is the safety issue. And this issue that when guest room attendants are doing mostly checkouts and they're not in their stations that they normally would work, what happens is when the guest room attendant, and you may hear from a couple of our public comment folks on this, but they get to know the customers. They get to know that if there's a family in a room or there's a bunch of frat guys that are drinking or somebody who's alone that may have to watch out for, when you work your stations where you have your normal amount of checkouts and daily room cleaning, you keep an eye out for each other. You get to know the guests, and at the end of the day, folks work alone up in these hotels, and there is significant danger. So, look, we believe that equally to the workload issue, the issue of the protecting this industry and providing the full service it should provide, that we think daily room cleaning is a piece of this safety puzzle in these massive resorts. And look, we mentioned October 1. Our members were adamant that we were going to fight very hard in our 2018 negotiations for room checks after so many hours. And you heard the representative from MGM talk about that. And in addition to safety buttons, but a key piece of that is this idea that there is a level of cleaning and a level of attention to these rooms. And this idea that somebody can just stay in their rooms as long as they want, that's something that we're just going to fight tooth and nail. And these companies are leading gaming companies of the world. And Las Vegas is as I said before, the gaming destination, entertainment destination of the world. But the truth of the matter is that we think that the legislature does have the responsibility, and we are asking the legislature to take into account the public good and the long-term good that is, I think, part of your role and part of our role too. So I don't know if that explains it that much, but I'm just trying to explain why we feel so strongly about this piece of SB 4.
Well, just to conclude, I just want you to know that I respect you, and you have a job to do to protect your members, and I think you're doing the best job that you possibly can, and I appreciate the diligent work that these housekeepers do. When I was formerly a visitor and not a resident of Nevada, I was always very impressed with the hotel's response to my needs. But I also have a capitalistic side of myself that I don't think that the hotels, and I shouldn't speak for them, but I don't think that they would embrace any type of policies that would detract from people coming to the entertainment capital of the world. But I look forward to having more discussions with you, and I appreciate your testimony today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Stone. I have two questions. Mr. Papa George, can you please talk about what is the union's perspective on the comments of workforce shortage? I know that that's something that we've had. You've heard folks say that there's bonuses, et cetera. What's the position that you guys have on this issue?
Ted Papa George, for the record. Thank you for the question. Look, it's clear to everyone that this pandemic has changed all of us. And certainly during the pandemic, there was we fought very hard, not just for SB 4, but SB 386, also language and agreements with our companies that allowed folks that if they chose not to come back to work, they would get extended recall rights and opportunities to pass on work if they were taking care of, certainly folks at home that were potentially victims of COVID-19 or elderly or folks who were handicapped. We worked very hard and fought very hard for that. But what we've seen, and we'll have to just disagree at this chatter that we've seen the last few years that folks don't want to work, or that that folks aren't wanting to do this hotel work. It is true that there is competition out there, and the industry does need to understand that, and we're not so sure they understand it yet from the Amazons of the world, where folks can go make $20+ an hour plus benefits, and they don't have to deal with customers. And everybody that works in the hotels knows folks that have went off and did that. We understand there's 14 Amazon fulfillment centers just in Las Vegas. And we have, there have been folks that have called it the retirement, especially with housekeepers. And so that's been a blame out there. But look, what we've seen is that what was generally considered the hardest job, and look, all these jobs in these hotels are physical. I worked for many years in the hotels, as our president did here. But what has always been seen as the hardest job in a hotel, because of this move towards less daily room cleaning, has made them even harder. And so it's become a self-fulfilling prophecy that where companies, we heard the representative talk about a 200-person shortage of guest room attendants throughout the corporation, with around 4,500 total, I think, GRAs. I may be misquoting those numbers. Look, there's a churn in that job anyways. It happened pre-COVID, but it's become a self-fulfilling prophecy that these are the hardest jobs are made harder, because you'll hear about folks chasing checkouts, essentially, where because the daily room clean is not provided, you've got to now move out of your station to find enough checkouts to fulfill your quota, that the work is harder, you have to travel more. And so that has become a self-fulfilling prophecy to make it more difficult to bring in workers. But you also mentioned, and we heard mentioned, that it's the culinary union contract that these large companies in Las Vegas are bound by, and we're very proud of that. But our wage levels are a floor. They're not a ceiling. And every union contract negotiates entry-level rates. And for a while, the large companies offered 100% rates to bring in guest room attendants. But recently, these large companies in Las Vegas went back to the 80% entry rate. Look, we just think that that there are workers that want to work, but a hard job that was made harder, that companies are going to have to deal with that. And there's two ways. And one is that they're going to have to reduce the level of just work and workload, but they are also going to have to meet the challenge of the environment right now. The fact that we've all been hurt with inflation, but these are folks that, are many times single moms or parents that both work, trying to work in these hotels and provide for their families. So, look, what we think that, what we've seen is that companies have the ability to bring in the workers that they need. We think there is a move by companies to restrict daily room cleaning, and we think it's to the detriment of the well-being and long-term well-being of this industry, and certainly a detriment to the well-being of our members and your constituents that work in the hotels.
Thank you so much, sir. Follow-up question. So I want to make sure that we're clear in terms of the earlier presentation and the testimony. So in your statements, I want to make a clear differentiation. So in the bill itself, what we've discussed so far is there are provisions that we've heard from, or sentiments that we've heard, that what was passed in SB4 has now become outdated in terms of the compliance towards positivity rates, CDC requirements, etc. From my understanding of what your testimony today is there's no argument against that particular provision. But what we are hearing is daily room cleaning should be maintained as was the standard before COVID-19, and we should continue to do that moving forward. Does that paint the accurate pictures of the different provisions of the bill? Or if you can testify on that, I think that would be helpful.
Yes, Ted Papageorge for the record. Yes, Senator, that is accurate. And look, we should remind everybody that this was a difficult negotiation on SB4 at the time. We participated along with the companies and of course, obviously the legislature and governor's office to try to get to where we needed to get. But in the bill now, it allows for guests to opt out. The normal process that guests would be able to, hang on their door that they'd rather not have cleaning that day. That is understood to be necessary in the industry and a necessary part of the industry. And this bill, as it states, allows for that. What it does not allow is for the company, upon check-in, to incentivize or attempt to make policies to say we're just not going to provide daily room cleaning, or we're going to incentivize folks against daily room cleaning. And look, that was a thoughtful and common sense piece of this bill. We think that is effective, provides the companies and the guests everything they need to be able to decide whether they want daily room cleaning or not, but without the company making this wholesale move to reduce or eliminate the idea of daily room cleaning, just because of the nature of what we think Las Vegas and the gaming industry in Nevada, the standards that should be held. And I'm just going to say this again, that, for all of you that travel, you've all been able, have declined daily room cleaning at times. But all of you that have traveled since the pandemic have come across where it just simply, you were told it wasn't available. And that's the part that the issue of not finding enough workers, that's not the issue. Companies can rectify that. The issue of customer taste, that's not what we're hearing from customers and what our members are hearing. And so we think that that's a standard that must happen. So this bill actually allows for that. And those are, we think, good policy, just like it is in New Jersey with the gaming industry, and the members of the gaming industry here that also participate in New Jersey work under those type of requirements. So yes, that's where we think this needs to go, and we would be more than willing to sit down and work closely with this committee and the industry and anybody else to try to get to that happy place. Thanks.
Thank you. And then one last question. We've heard sentiments that guests in general probably don't find this as a preference for daily room cleaning. I guess my question is, do you think it's fair to say that the visitors who pay for the hotel rooms don't want their rooms cleaned daily? Is that a accurate sentiment? Is that something that maybe your workers that you've spoken to probably hear differently? I think if you can just touch point, we've talked already enough about the safety aspects, the cleanliness aspect, but I just want to make sure that itself is clarified before we move on.
Look, the research that we've done, and our folks, that certainly is not myself, I'm sorry, Ted Papageorge for the record, the research that our team has done and the polling that we've done and the information that we get from our members, we have to respectfully disagree with some of the representatives that folks just don't want daily room cleaning to these large amounts. We think that if folks are told that or incentivized, that may happen, but again, we say it's to the detriment of the industry overall, long-term health. But no, we just don't see that, and we think it's a wrong turn by the industry. But I want to just remind folks that the SB 4 allows for guests, to the extent as many that want to use the standard procedures that they've always done to decline daily room cleaning. That's appropriate. So, and if that's the case, then really the industry's, huge disagreement with that is a bit of a moot point, because we're certainly fine with allowing guests to decline. And with that, really the industry shouldn't have an issue with that. We're not understanding why they do, to be honest with you.
Thank you so much. I don't think we have any other questions, so we're going to move on to testimony in opposition. So for folks that would like to testify in opposition, both in Carson City and Las Vegas, if you can please come forward. And we'll start here first in Carson City, and then we'll move down to Las Vegas. Please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair Donate and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Susie Martinez, and I am the Executive Secretary Treasurer of the Nevada State AFL-CIO. And on behalf of 150,000 members and 120 unions, the Nevada State AFL-CIO strongly opposes Senate Bill 441. The provisions in Senate Bill 4 ensures that state economy stayed afloat during the pandemic and protected our hospitality workers as they worked to keep the businesses up and running. And for those of you, I mean, many of you guys know me, but before I was a legislator or actually the executive secretary treasurer of the Nevada State AFL-CIO, I actually worked on the Strip for 34 years. I was a front desk agent. So, I mean, this is not just an issue of the red shirts. This was something that affected me as well. You know, when throughout the years, we've incentivized people, you know, we would say that we were going to go green. So, you know, we don't want to clean your room, so to speak. Throughout my 34 years of being at the front desk, we would also tell people we'd give them a $25 food and beverage credit if their room wasn't cleaned. And just recently, we would have to ask people if you wanted your room clean when I was checking you in. If we, you know, if I didn't put the information in properly in the computer, I would be called in by management because they're keeping track of what we were doing. They're keeping track of how many people I'm telling to opt out and how many people I'm telling to opt in. So I've had to deal with this. I mean, I've been on the front lines. I had to, what we would do at the front desk when people would come, because people would always ask, I'm the front line. I'm the one that gets beat up, right? People say, hey, I have been here for the last 4 days and my room has not been cleaned. Well, I have been instructed by management and the property that I worked at that if they got out of line, I could offer a one-night resort fee. So for instance, Mr. Donate, you're upset, your room's not cleaned? Oh, let me take off a one-night resort fee to calm you down. Then, you know, you might yell a little more. So you know what, Mr. Donate, okay, you know what? Let me take off 2. I think the most that they would let us take off is 3 nights because then, you know, we're getting into the profits, right? But I mean, I have worked this industry and I know, I mean, when I hear people say that, you know, that people think that Las Vegas is fabulous and all of this, I would beg to differ. Come and work side by side with me and my coworkers at the front desk. We would hear it every single day. I would come in the morning and people would be complaining, why was my room not cleaned? When we spoke about toilet paper, actually they'd bring us the toilet paper. I would hand out toilet paper to my guests because we didn't have guest room attendants to give them to. They had cut down so short on all of our staff. Even at our front desk during Christmas time, we were reduced to such a small amount of people. One of my coworkers, she got fired because she took the Christmas vacation off. Thank God we have a union, because in our union contract, there's a certain amount of people that are supposed to be allowed to go. She got her job back, thank God. But we have been working so hard in the casino industry. And you know what? I loved my career. I loved my job, but I'd have to say these last few years has been really tough because I know what we have to go through. It was, you know, here at the legislature, as many of you guys know, you know, the lobbyists, you know, they all treat you so nice, right? Everybody's, yes, Ms. Martinez, you know, they open the doors for you. So I come here, did my session, went back to work. And on a Monday,
Ms.
about
Martinez,
15 minutes.
if you can please wrap up your comments.
Yes, I'm sorry.
please.
About 15 minutes after I got to work, you know, I get called these obscene names because, again, the rooms are not getting cleaned. And you know what? I think that's a travesty for our industry. I take pride. You know, Las Vegas, our hotel rooms, that's our bread and butter. We need to take pride in our Las Vegas. We're fabulous, Las Vegas. Let's keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Greg Esposito representing the Nevada State Pipe Trades. As I've said before in this building many times, the plumber protects the health of the nation. And of course, cleanliness is one of the ways that gets done. Whether you're talking about COVID, SARS a few years ago, Legionella disease, there's lots of ways that dirty residences used by mass amounts of people can breed disease and pass it on. You look at cruise ships and how they get cleaned twice a day. Your rooms get cleaned twice a day on cruise ships, and the surfaces on cruise ships get cleaned all day, every day, because of the potential for a norovirus. And so I listened to what the proponents of the bill said, and I hope that they know what they're talking about. I hope they know what they're doing when it comes to guest services and not making one of our resorts ground zero for what happens next. Because if it happens, it would be devastating to Las Vegas. If you look at any of the previous problems we've had, whether it be tragedies or other infections, it's hit us. And so I oppose this bill because I don't want that to happen again, because somebody didn't quite know what they were doing when it came to the cleanliness of a hotel room. Thank you.
Good evening. For the record, Adam Mack, last name M-A-C-K, Legislative Director for IATSE 363 in Northern Nevada. Speaking on behalf of hundreds of theatrical workers who were displaced from their careers for over 1 year during our last public health crisis, we oppose SB 441 as written. Heightened cleaning standards represent job safety and job security for those who work in high occupancy establishments. While we understand that certain cleaning standards from SB 4 are now outdated in regard to COVID-19, we believe it is not yet time to move on from these enhanced cleaning measures in whole. On a personal note, my wife and I stayed at the Luxor Hotel a few weeks back for the Taylor Swift concert. The same weekend that the University of Connecticut men's basketball team reportedly left the Luxor Hotel due to poor cleaning standards, we experienced a similar poor cleaning standard. Our room was only cleaned on the first day. We did have to track down housekeeping on our own because we were never able to quite get in touch with someone from the front desk. And I would say that we most definitely intend to return to Las Vegas, whether it be for a Raiders game or another high-profile concert that I can't find here in Northern Nevada. But next time we may just try Mandalay Bay instead. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's go to Las Vegas and then we'll come back.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Renteria. I'm a guest room attendant on the Strip, and I have been a culinary union member since 2018. I'm here today in opposition to SB 441. As a working mom, daily room cleaning is important so I can have time so I can have strength to go home to my family, make dinner, and be with my kids. We have a law mandating daily room cleaning, but that doesn't always happen. After my shift, most of the days, my entire body is in pain. I have to be taking pain medication every single day. On those days where I only clean checkout rooms, my back hurts because I'm going as fast as I can. I'm worried that I could slip and fall and get hurt trying to keep up with the workload. That is why daily room cleaning is a safety issue. There was a situation where a guest was aggressive with me because he wanted me to clean the room, but it wasn't assigned to me. When I reported to the company, they ended up having me clean the room anyways. It will be less stressful to have automatic daily room cleaning. I want Nevada leaders to know that not cleaning a room every day does not help us. It also cuts jobs, and my coworkers end up not working as much, which means those of us working have to do more and more. We are the ones cleaning those rooms every single day. We know how dirty they get and the extra time that we have to spend on those rooms. My coworkers and I are mostly women of color. The loss of our income, the loss of our job and income will devastate our communities and families. Please, be for the workers, oppose to SB 441, and protect working moms like me. Thank you.
My name is Elena Newman. I'm a guest room attendant in Las Vegas and have been in culinary union member 19 years. I'm here today in opposition to SB 441. In Las Vegas, the law requires daily room cleaning. I want to clean rooms every day, but doesn't happen always, even though there is a law requiring it. When rooms are not being cleaned daily, there is excessive work. There is soap scum built up in the bathroom, a lot of trash in the room. It takes a lot longer to clean and vacuum the rooms. It gives me a lot of stress because I get behind on my work. When we are unable to complete our rooms, we get disciplined. When I get stressed, it feels like my body aches, which doesn't make me feel good. Guest room attendants throughout Nevada have been fighting for increased safety and daily room cleaning. Recently, my coworker and I found a man sleeping in the hotel towers that we were assigned to clean. I pushed the safety button and called my supervisor. By the time security showed up, the guy was long way gone. Daily room cleaning is a safety issue. When we aren't cleaning daily, there is less workers. And when there's less workers in these massive hotel towers, we aren't able to work or look for each other. By law, we need to clean the room every day. We want to keep it that law. I ask Nevada Legislature to oppose SB 441. The legislation won't protect us. Thank you.
My name is Charetzaida Gonzalez. I am a guest room attendant on Las Vegas trip and culinary member for 17 years. I am here today in opposition to the SB 441. It's not a good law for us because that law could hurt workers like me. In the past shutdown, reopening, I was recalled back to work, and I noticed that my coworkers and I were not cleaning room daily like we used to. The customers started getting upset with us that because their room were not being cleaning. When rooms are not cleaning daily, it's more work for us. The rooms are dirty. When daily room cleaning is not happening, and workload gets harder. We try our hardest to complete our room assignment every day, but when rooms are not cleaning daily, we are stressed and exhausted. I work hard to support my family, and I want the same for my coworkers. I want to keep doing an excellent job, but with SB 441 and with a daily clean service requirement, my job will be harder. When I get off of work, I am so tired, and I don't have energy to spend with my families. And I want to the Nevada Legislature to know that we need to daily clean service and oppose to the SB 441. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's come back to Carson City, and then we'll go back to Las Vegas and then virtual.
Hello, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Tony Ramirez for the record, Tonyramirez. I'm here representing Make the Road Nevada, a Nevada-based nonprofit, which elevates the power of working class immigrant communities here in Nevada. On behalf of our membership, we are here in opposition of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else here in Carson City? Let's go back to Las Vegas.
My name is Marian Cervantes, and I've been working as a guest room attendant for almost 16 years in Las Vegas Street. I'm here today and oppose to SB 441. I work so hard, and I'm a proud of the quality of my work. I try hard to finish my room quote each day. But the workload, it's intense, and I'm usually exhausted at the end of every day. And I say every single day, it's the same thing. In rooms that guests are staying in, the occupied room, I don't even clean them every day now, which means it's horrible. An angry guest come out on his room and ask me why I didn't clean his room yesterday. His room wasn't on my list to clean. So I let the customer know to call down to housekeeping, and I asked them. He say he did it. He called down already, but they say they could only send clean towels. So, only clean towels. I don't think so. He just wanna be clean towels. He wanna be the room clean and nice like we used to do it. The customer was really upset and told me that he paid full price for his room and that he wanted to clean. And I say, call again. He called again. And he told me, you know what, they are really short on people. So they are the reason they want, cut this. So daily cleaning is a safety issue. When my coworkers and I are working, we keep eye out for each other to make sure every day everyone is safe. When daily rooms clean is eliminate, those are less job and less of us working. So who will wash out for us when we are working alone in the towers? It is a question. We, the guest room attendants, are here today on behalf of tens of thousands in Las Vegas, including the non-union worker, to ask the Nevada leaders. We ask you leaders to protect us and oppose SB 441.
Good evening, Chairman Doniate and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Michael Giddings. That's Gittings. I am the president of UFCW Local 711, which represents over 7,000 workers in Nevada. And I strongly urge the committee to oppose SB 441. The parts of this bill that are in regard to daily room cleaning are an example of essential workers being taken advantage of in the name of profit. I also believe this bill is short-sighted in that people have come to expect a certain level of service when they come to Las Vegas. Now that the city is bouncing back, why would we want to treat visitors worse than we did pre-pandemic? Those parts of this bill are good for no one. Don't give employers a free pass to abuse essential workers and tarnish the image of Las Vegas. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else in Las Vegas? As people are coming forward, if there are any others, let's go to virtually.
Thank you, Chair. If you'd like to testify in opposition on SB 441, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Liz Sorensen. That's L-I-Z, last name S-O-R-E-N-S-O-N, and I am the president of the Nevada State AFL-CIO. I got to tell you, I've been pretty taken aback listening to all the safety issues and concerns this evening. And I certainly hope that all of you legislators are listening to this, because this is not anything that any of us should take lightly. For this reason and for many other reasons that were stated earlier, I too am in strong opposition of SB 441, and I urge this committee to do the same and oppose this. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Christine Saunders. That's CHRISTINE. SAUNDERS, and I'm the Policy Director with the Progressive Leadership Alliance in Nevada. I want to echo the sentiments of the folks who spoke before me in opposition, but as someone with an autoimmune disorder, I'm at a higher risk of complications from COVID-19, and I still carry these fears with me every day, as numerous folks have been out sick with COVID during this legislative session. Policies like maintaining daily room cleaning help me feel that I live in a state that values my health rather than corporate profits. Thank you.
For the record, my name is Mark Ellis, Communication Workers of America, and we are currently opposed to SB 441 as currently written for all the things mentioned before. Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman Diante and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Renee Ruiz, R-E-N-E-E. My last name is spelled R-U-I-Z. I am the legislative advocate for National Nurses United, National Nurses Organizing Committee of Nevada. As nurses, we're on the front line of the pandemic. To be clear, COVID is not gone. Neither are all the other of hundreds of communicable diseases that still exist and are transmitted all over the city of Las Vegas, including in our resorts and hotels. We truly believe that cleanliness is a public health issue and should be maintained at the highest standards. Additionally, the safeguards put in by
workers going in and out of rooms and knocking on doors and interacting with guests actually saves lives and provides a welfare check for many people who are in situations that they potentially need help for. So it's therefore that we stand in solidarity with our siblings of the Culinary Union in opposing SB 441. Thank you.
Caller, you are unmuted and you may begin.
Good evening, Chair Donato and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Beverly Williams. That's Beverly, Beverly. My last name is Williams. I am the Secretary Treasurer for the Southern Nevada Central Labor Council. I strongly oppose SB 441, and I urge the committee to oppose this bill as well. Safety first and cleanliness first. Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Linda Ward Smith, and I am the president of AFGE Local 1224 here in Las Vegas, Nevada, representing over 3,000 members of federal workers. And I am speaking in opposition of SB 441, standing in solidarity of our culinary members. As a nurse, I can tell you that germs do not discriminate. They go where they can. And we tend to think sometimes that because our guests are in their own room, in their own environment, that the germs stay where they are. However, germs go where they can and they transmit. And so our guests go into the casino and the germs go there too. Therefore, when our guests come back into the room, the germs are there and they migrate with our guests in their rooms. And that's how the germs spread. So that's why we are definitely for cleanliness, and we feel that daily cleaning saves lives and it stops the spread so that when our guests go back into their populations, into their own state, they don't take the germs with them. So we strongly hope that you oppose this bill just on that effort. So thank you, and I yield back to you guys.
Good afternoon, Chairman Dignate and committee members. For the record, my name is Gabe Christensen, GABECHRISTENSON, and I'm the legislative rep for Smart TD 1043. And I strongly oppose SB 441 and urge this committee to oppose it as well. Safety of workers is paramount, and I ask you to oppose this.
Chair, there are no more callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you so much. Last minute request for anyone else in opposition, either in Las Vegas or in Carson City. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to neutral. Is there anyone in this room that would like to testify in neutral on this bill? Anyone in Las Vegas, if you can come forward. And anyone virtually.
If you'd like to testify in neutral on SB 441, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers for neutral at this time.
Thank you so much. Senator Dondero-Loop, I'm assuming you have closing remarks. I do have one question for the industry. If you have someone that could come. Do you want me to talk?
Why don't you ask the question and let's see if I need to phone a friend?
You
Would that be fair? I would definitely need to phone a friend. Okay, well, then I may have to get you the answer if I don't know the question.
Let's take a 3-minute recess. And if there's a, do you want me to ask the question first?
That would be wonderful.
Okay. The question would be, I think it's important before we make the closing statements just to answer this direct question, which is, we've heard testimony both in support as to the burdens that our gaming operators have faced since the reductions of what endemicity is for this disease and the difficulty in compliance. But we've also heard sentiments from the opposition saying that there is no hesitation as to one part of the bill, which we made the clear division as to the public health aspects of this bill in terms of our failure to comply with what has been the disease of what it has transgressed to today. It sounded to me from the opposition there was no denial on that portion. And so if there's no denial on that portion of the bill, but the priority now is the codification or moving forward for the standard as to what we had before for COVID-19, why is there an opposition to codify daily room cleaning? So that was the question I presume you would have. It was not directed towards you, it was towards the industry.
Virginia Valentine, Nevada Resort Association, for the record. Senator Donati, thank you for the question. What we would like to do is, there were not daily cleaning, but there are cleaning standards that were in the statute before the pandemic. Those require that soiled linens, worn out linens are cleaned, and they also require that rooms are thoroughly cleaned between different guests. We're saying simply that these standards that were specific to the COVID pandemic now, that's over. We're saying, let's go back to that cleaning before. So we are respecting a guest preference for when rooms are clean. Some guests just want towels. Some guests want their rooms clean every day. They can do that now. We feel like we're a responsible industry. Health and safety is our top priority, and it's up to the resorts now to comply with the state laws before the pandemic. I think someone pointed out that this was a different kind of pandemic. We don't know what the next one will be. It may be that we don't want daily cleaning for that. There was a point of time, I think, when very early on, when one of the national health organizations recommended that people not go into guest rooms to reduce the spread of COVID. So this, again, I would say in terms of your question about codifying, you've put now something in statute that we don't have the flexibility to change. So the virus itself changed over time. The recommendations from national experts, the CDC, changed. We simply cannot be in a position where we don't have the flexibility and we're limited to changing or revisiting regulations or standards once every 2 years when the legislature's in session. I think we have a lot of extremely qualified health professionals, both at the local health districts and at the state board, the state Health and Human Services Department. And I think it's more appropriate, and I think I speak for all of us, that those entities that have that expertise, that are there every day doing their jobs, have the ability to set those regulations and expectations, rather than be stuck with something that we're not able to change as the virus changes or the emergency changes. And so I would say that's why we want to have those taken out of statute, let those be dealt with in a place where they can be changed and they can go with the ebb and flow of whatever emergency we're dealt next.
Thank you. And then just one tiny question. So I think I'm glad what we discussed in this hearing where there are certain public health provisions that are difficult to maintain, but the daily room cleaning one is, I think, what came up during testimony. So the final question that I have is, with all the provisions that we have discussed today as to where we move forward, what we're at, I completely forgot to ask the question. I don't think we ever asked, are we failing to comply right now with the regulations? Or are we maintaining the compliance of SB4 and now we're asking for us to revise it? What's the status of how the resorts are operating right now in terms of the compliance? Is it that we're failing to comply with how it is right now, which is why we're asking for the revision?
The resorts are continuing to comply with the 2020 COVID pandemic regulations as amended in, I think there were some things that were removed in SB 386. But yes, we continue to be fully compliant. We're inspected by the health districts, and until we can pass this bill, then we will continue to comply with all state and local regulations.
Thank you. And then, so, okay, I think that pretty much answers and clears up the narrative, at least from my perspective. Senator Dunderloop, do you have any closing remarks?
Yes, thank you very much for your time this evening. I know it's been a long night. You know, to be clear, this isn't a repeal of something that we got wrong. It's quite the opposite. It's a sunset of something we got right. And I think that the resorts, as Ms. Valentine said, are complying, and that you've heard a lot of testimony tonight, and I think the health departments have solidified the conversation. So with that, I thank you all very, very much. And I look forward to, and I urge you to pass this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Senator Dunderloop. I want to thank everyone for coming for this bill on whichever side. I think it's an important conversation for all of us. Again, I want to thank our gaming operators and the workers for showing up today. You know, as a closing statement, it was important, and I want to make sure the record reflects this. You know, I can spend my time talking to folks that represent organizations, etc. But when this bill came up, I felt that there was a need to probably ask the most important person, which was my mom and my grandma. And I asked her a simple question, which was, if we had daily room cleaning, would it have made a difference? And she said, absolutely. So I think that's important for something that was a conversation that I had with my own family. So we'll go ahead and close the hearing on this bill. And we'll take a quick 3-minute recess so we can gather our, go to the restroom, etc., and then we will continue on with the work session.